Fisherman's Post. More fish, more often.
Hello and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode is our annual end of the year holiday special. It's not a normal podcast. It's an opportunity for us to bring in our sponsors and thank them personally, thank them here on the podcast for making the podcast possible, for us to bring in our captain guests and thank them for being guests and for making the podcast special, and just to look back on the year and sort of celebrate, have a little fun, and gather together like everyone does this time of year. Hope you enjoy. And here we are with one of our big sponsors this year, Sabrina Davis, Port City Signs. What is it? Port City Signs and Graphics. Sabrina, thank you so much. As I've been telling our audience, we have a long history with Sabrina, Port City Signs and Graphics, and Fisherman's Post. New this year is the podcast relationship. So first and foremost, I just wanted to introduce you to our podcast crowd. They're very fond of the podcast, and I want them to meet some of the people that are responsible for helping bring them the podcast. And so this is my introduction of Sabrina Davis to our crowd.
Hi. Yeah, I love this, Gary. I'm so excited to be part of this, and I was really just proud to be part of what you're doing on the podcast this year. I mean, going way back, I was a radio person at the very beginning of my career, so I love podcasts. I love your podcasts. I love all the ones that are kind of produced in our community, and then I listen to lots and lots of podcasts about different things, so it's really fun. And then we're good friends because I think maybe we met through fishing, maybe. Way back, my husband, Michael, is a king mackerel fisherman, of course, and he loves fishing, and I enjoy fishing with him, probably not as much as he wishes I would, but so, the fishing community is important to us, and most fishermen are small business owners, and we really try to support small business owners. We're all commercial here at Port City Signs, and we try to take the pain out of getting your signs and your graphics so that you can do more fishing.
Well, good. I mean, it sounds like that's basically what David and I have been trying to brand. We've been trying to tell everyone that, hey, you will wrap a boat. You have wrap boats, and you wrap more fleet trucks. You wrap more vehicles than boats. But then I just talk about my business relationship, signs, flags, banners, leaderboard logos, all of that. And so it sounds like I've been representing you correctly. And I think, you've been watching and we have a little bit of a shtick, so we're going to bring David Harden on right now. All right, David, we have you on here now, and we have the Sabrina of Port City Signs and Graphics.
World famous.
And we'd like you to present the game that we usually do.
Okay, so normally the shtick we do is we have two signs, and Gary usually has to do the guessing, but since you're our guest tonight, Sabrina, we're going to let you pick which sign was produced by Port City Signs and Graphics. Are you ready to see sign number one?
I'm ready.
Here's sign number one. It is an Indian Hills Community Center sign that says, "Where did the Terminator find toilet paper? I'll be back."
Man, I had no idea she did the Indian Hills Community Center signs. That's awesome that Sabrina does that.
They're very well-known signs.
She's famous.
I don't know exactly where it is, but I love it.
All right, well, here's sign number two.
Oh, that's one of my faves. Yes.
It's a nice one.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Spartina? Is that how you pronounce that?
An interesting word. So they pronounce it Spartina. I was corrected when we were doing this for a landscape architect who was involved in the development of this community way back. It's a nice long time client. And then there's a brand that's actually one of my favorite brands for the ladies out there, and they call it Spartina, but it's a marsh grass is what I understand.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right with fishing, so it's where you might be looking for bait.
I'm fluent with Spartina. I've never heard Spartina. I've never used that pronunciation or heard it actually.
I hadn't either, so who knows? But that's what I was told back in the day when we were working on this project. They kept saying it's Spartina, not Spartina. I'm like, okay.
Spartina. Okay, all right, there we go. All right.
So maybe it's modern.
Well, Sabrina, like we've been asking the captain's question, or we will be asking the captain's question about the upcoming year. So we'll give you the same question. Anything new, anything in the works that we should look for from Port City Signs and Graphics in 2025?
Well, I mean, we continue to evolve here. Like, I've got a great experienced staff. We're a staff of 18 to 20, roughly. Like, we've got some, folks that don't work full time. And we have a lot of experience in the sign industry. And so, like, this year we added our own paint mixing station. So we do computerized paint mixing. We're kind of with the Matthews paint system. We're one of the few people in the area who do that in our region, actually. And then, of course, we paint all of our stuff. We do a lot of manufacturing, aluminum welding, and we really have moved into manufacturing electrical illuminated signage for the outside of buildings. And we've been doing some of that for years, but now that push is sort of breaking the habit of, Port City Signs doesn't really do that. And so we do everything from the vehicle wraps, which is just bread and butter, lots of fleet wraps for really, really large fleets, interior ADA signage and, wall wraps and all of that sort of stuff. All the way to the electrical signage, and still do lots and lots of job site signage for construction companies and things like that.
Well, I'm glad you got a lot going on, because I just got a text here from your husband, Michael Davis. He wants me to ask you on air if he is green-lighted to get that $500,000 Onslow-based center console so that he can really start competing in the King Mackerel tournaments.
As long as I get my laundry room first.
All right. Michael Davis, you heard it here. You are a laundry room away from a new center console. Sabrina, thank you so much again for being a sponsor. Thank you for making the time to check in with us today. I'm glad our audience got to meet you. I'm a huge fan from years ago. And, again, it's just a joy to work with you.
Thank you. Yeah, the feeling is mutual.
And it's always a pleasure when we welcome longtime friend, Captain Rod Bierstedt, and I think it's On My Way Guide Service now. I don't think it's On My Way Charters, On My Way Guide Service, but I'll let him correct me just as soon as I get out of the way. But first I say, Rod, thank you for being a podcast guest this year, and thank you for checking in with us for our end of the year holiday special.
Well, thank you, Gary. It's always a pleasure. And yes, it is On My Way Guide Service. The boat is no more. The charter business is no more. I've turned all that over to my son, Family Ties Charters. So I'm just guiding on other people's boats and loving every minute of it.
So I can hire you to come on my boat and teach me how to better fish from my boat.
That is the key thing right there, Gary. You just summarized it perfectly. That's learning how to fish your boat and do what you want to do. And that's what I'm offshore, anything from the beach all the way out to the break.
All right. Will you please show us your Christmas sweater so then I can move on with this segment?
Okay. Well, it's hard to see. It's Merry Fishmas. Not Christmas, Fishmas. So, wait a minute, let me see if we can move on here. Well, I'm trying to do this with my phone, guys, and I'm struggling.
Rod, you have to make it harder for me to make old people jokes with you. You have to.
Yeah, I'm making it too easy.
You're just serving them up like this. Like, what am I? Who could fault me for taking advantage?
Yeah, I mean, the door swung wide open. You might as well just step right on in and stomp away.
Well, Rod, on a more serious note, my first question for you at this end of the year holiday podcast is, how has doing Fisherman's Post podcasts changed your life?
How has it changed my life? Well, it's made me very aware of my young age because I get constantly beat up about being somewhat old, elderly, over the hill. Experience, yeah. Well, I call it seasoned, Gary. I call it seasoned.
I think you're by far the most experienced I know.
And all of my hats that I have, my wife gives me a big ration of what about it. And she goes, they're ugly, they're dirty, they're nasty. And I go, they're just well seasoned like me. So, it's just what I'm a well seasoned individual.
You are the most experienced person by far that I have a relationship with in Fisherman's Post, I think.
Well, I was very lucky when I came here. I had some great mentors. and they took me under their wing. And I'm just trying to pay it forward, Gary. People say, well, why are you doing what you do? You share so much information. And I'm just trying to pay it forward. I try to keep it simple and talk simple to people and trying to help them enjoy the resource we have.
Well, look, I'm going to come back to this question. I have a small list of questions I'm asking everyone.
Okay.
One of them is, so what's, and this is in relationship to On My Way Guide Service. What's one new thing you started doing this year, or what's one new thing you're going to start doing next year?
One new thing I started doing this year.
Or you're going to start next year?
Wow. That is tough. Because I'm always learning and I'm always trying to up my game and improve, constantly studying, learning, checking things out. So I think what I'm going to try to do this next year is get more into artificials, offshore trolling. As you know, I'm a meat guy. I troll a lot of belly strips, ballyhoo. I'm not big into the artificials. And I'm going to give them a whirl, and hopefully it'll work out, and hopefully they'll prove productive for me. I know some people have good results with them. I'm going to try them more this year.
All right. Great answer. Slow start, but great answer. As far as Santa Claus, what would you like Santa to bring you for your tackle box?
I'd like him to clean out my tackle box.
That's a fair answer.
Gary, if we had time, I'd walk you out in my tackle room and you would go, holy cow. It is a collection of 40 years of stuff. And it's a 10 by 12 room that is absolutely full. 75 rods and reels, hundreds of rigs hanging up that I've made. And why I need that many, I have no idea, but they're hanging up. So I need to clean things up a little bit.
I think that's a great answer. I think you are the experienced angler. All right, last question for you.
Okay.
And you got to keep it simple, man, because I know you have so much going on up in that brain of yours. But what if I were to ask you to share with our audience either one of your best pieces of fishing advice or one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice to give? What would that be? Set us up for the next year. Okay.
The number one thing is, and the tackle guys are going to hate me on this, but the number one thing I tell people is that fishing is a contact sport. And if you don't make contact with the fish, what you have in the water makes zero difference. So you have to put yourself where the fish most likely are going to be today and then seek them out. And they're not everywhere in the ocean. There's a statistic that I have, and some people might disagree with me. That's your prerogative. But I've been told that 100% of the pelagic fish that we go after, Gary, are in less than 2% of the ocean. So that means there's 98% of the ocean that don't have those fish in it. And the key is go where the fish are. Put yourself where the fish are, and they're not everywhere. And that I also tell people that the ocean, think about the Mississippi River with no banks, and the ideal water roams and moves everywhere. And it can move and slide miles during the day. And so that's the number one thing, is you must try to put yourself where the fish are going to be today. And just running to a spot on the GPS chart or a public spot or a spot everybody goes to isn't the answer, because the good water could be 14, 15, 20 miles north of that. And if you'd gone up there, you caught a lot of fish, and you went somewhere and you didn't do so well. That's it.
Sage advice from from the most experienced angler we'll have on this show, the most experienced angler we'll have at the Southport Saltwater Fishing School, Captain Rod Bierstead. Jokes aside, man, love you, very fond of you, appreciate you, and you've added to my Fisherman's Post experience.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, I love your organization, love your publication, been a part of it for who knows how long, long time. We've known each other, and I look forward to coming down to Southport this year, and I'm going to be getting it out to everybody to come March 9th, and let's have some fun.
Right on. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Same to you, Gary, and your family. Thank you.
And here we have with us, checking in with our end of the year holiday special podcast, Captain Jeremy Hicks of Calypso Sport Fishing out of Hatteras Village. Jeremy, welcome to the show. Welcome to our special podcast.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, man. Merry Christmas to you. And first and foremost, part of what we're doing here is just giving Dave and I an opportunity to say thank you very much for being a podcast guest. And, for me, it's, of course, beyond thank you for being a podcast guest this year, but thank you through the years. Thank you for the schools. Thank you for the fishing trips, the fishing memory. And, really, I would say thank you, Jeremy, for helping Fisherman's Post get something of a foothold on Hatteras Island. I mean, I think you endorsing us or just saying nice things or even just asking people to give us a chance out there certainly made my path much easier out there. Yeah. I think Hatteras Village, they have certain expectations and they just don't let anyone walk in there, certainly not a guy like me, and start telling about fishing. That's right. So I appreciate all of it is what I'm saying.
Man. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It's been a long ride. 15 years probably?
I mean,
more?
My brain doesn't work that way. I'm still young and not gray haired in my mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I have just talked about what you've done for me. And so my first question for you is, how has doing a Fisherman's Post podcast changed your life?
So, not only have I had people reach out, and I have several very good customers that fish with me several times a year that I've met through something to do with Fisherman's Post. So the proof's in that pudding. But the one thing I think, Gary, that it does for me is it makes me take the time to think about not just get on the boat and go, but to think, to bring that knowledge, to bring the years, the experience, the bites, everything that we talk about, and I've done 2 with you, everything, or maybe 3, I can't even remember, but it makes me refresh my memory. And sometimes it brings up memories or thoughts or ideas that might have went to the wayside 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. So I think that for me doing the podcast, not only for the business end of things, but also getting to talk about what I love and what am fortunate enough to do for a living, but it takes me back to being in that cockpit or on the bridge and doing the work. It just brings it all back. And I can remember the last one we just did about Wahoo. Like, I thought about some things in that podcast that I might not have thought about in a while. And so, it's just all around good. It's just all around good.
Well, right on, man. I tell you what, for question number 2, I mean, I've already shined you. I've already said good things about you and helping me out in Hatteras. And I'm going to do it again. Here, this question really is inspired in large part by you. And it came from, fishing with you a second time as mate on Bite Me. And the conversation on the way out was just you telling me about some of the things you had tweaked, some of the things you had changed, just to give you even a slightly better percentage of hookups or, release or raise rates, whatever. And I was just intrigued by all the little details. And so that's really the inspiration, because it's one of my favorite questions now to ask captains. But it's like, what's one new thing you started doing on the boat this year? Or what's one new thing you plan on starting to do next year, 2025?
Well, you've got to keep your foot ahead of the other one. You've always got to be ready to to adapt and to change and to overcome. And there's always challenges, especially when you fish for a living. One thing that we added on the boat this year is we now have a 360-degree Furuno searchlight sonar. So as I am still trying to learn and adapt and overcome and change things up, now I have a new tool to play with. It's not the Omni, but so far I had it this fall, and so far it's been a learning curve, but it's been fun. So I'm adding another tool to the toolbox. Fishing wise, I think that, we keep our hook sharp, we keep our bait swimming, we're in a place where the fish are. There are little things that we can tweak as the day goes on to help improve in the condition that we're fishing. But it's hard for me just to give you just one other than, our sonar.
Give me, I guess I'll follow up then, because my next question is kind of related, like what would you put on the boat? And I think you have a great answer. So I'm going to spend our time together saying, man, give me one successful application of that new play toy you put on the boat. Tell me one way you used it to success.
Yeah. So the searchlight sonar is very similar to the Omni, except for it takes a time period for it to scan around the boat. At certain lengths, it takes longer. If you're stretched out there to 1,000 feet, it takes about 14 seconds to do like a 180 around the boat. It's got high frequency and low frequency. The high frequency is good for marking bait, which when you're meat fishing is good. Wahoos, dolphins, things like that. When you go on the low frequency, I have marked individual sailfish, 2 sailfish. The first individual fish on a low frequency that I marked was 2 sailfish, and we had bites out of them, had a double header. The second one that I marked was a white marlin out in the deep, like 150 fathoms, and we caught him. He came to the teaser flatline. So, it's a learning curve. There's a lot to it, but it makes things, it gives you just a little bit more of an edge. Just a little, if you think about it, if you're trolling down the break and say there's a pot of bait 500 feet off your starboard side, and it's 15 fathoms down, and the wahoos are all around it, or the gaffer dolphins, or whatever, and you're trolling down the break and you're maybe doing a little zigzag, but you have no idea that thing's over there. Now this tool will give us the opportunity to identify, hey man, there's a bait mark 10 fathoms down at 40 degrees from the bow, 500 feet, and we can go over there to it. Now, will we get bites? We don't know. There's got to be fish there, but I think it's going to be a great tool. I'm fired up about it.
All right, last question, man. Just a quick one. What's one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice to give people?
I heard some good ones as I was keyed in there earlier, and Captain Rod and all those guys. It's be where the fish are, have your tackle, have your stuff right, hook sharp, leader isn't chafed, baits are swimming, all that. That gives you more opportunity to get a bite than anything. Then find the fish.
All right. Captain Jeremy Hicks, Calypso Sport Fishing, man. Thank you, and thank you again. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and my best to the family.
Same here. Thank you.
And here I am with another opportunity to thank another sponsor, and this one, Scott Bradshaw, yourboatmoney.com, and New Coast. And I'll translate and tell everyone Marine Finance. If we haven't branded those names for you yet, let me tell you that Scott Bradshaw is everything Marine Finance, and he does so through yourboatmoney.com and New Coast. Scott, welcome to the show.
Gary, thank you for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, yeah, man, it's a treat to have you on, and again, for our sponsors, I want people to see you, meet you, hear you talk, because, I've known you through the years, and as I've been saying in some of the podcasts, like you've done the schools, you get the vibe that we're trying to go for, which is, of course, you want to make a profit. Of course, you want to have customers and clients, but you also recognize the value of relationships and recognize the value of education. And that's one of the reasons, if not the main reason, I was excited when you approached me about the possibility of sponsoring the podcast.
Gary, I appreciate the opportunity because, quite honestly, what you and your crew here have been able to do for the fishing community over the years just means so much to me, because I don't have a lot of time to get offshore and fish because I work. I have a young family. Well, I say young, 16 and 19 years old, and I don't have a lot of time to waste when I go through that inlet. So having this access to the guides and the charter captains and all the knowledge that you have saves me from making a lot of mistakes when I do get a chance to get out that inlet. So it was just I'm glad I can do it. I'm glad I can help you and sponsor this and share it out as many places as I can, just because I want other people to have that same connection with these guides and these charter captains and learn and spend their time enjoying the water and not making a lot of mistakes. So.
Well, right on, man. So I guess I want the people to hear from you what I've been trying to brand. So give me at least the elevator answer to what is yourboatmoney.com.
The website is actually a service, an informational based service for how boat loans work. And yes, you can apply for a boat loan there. Of course, I want you to apply for a boat loan there, but it really is a knowledge base, a peek behind the curtain, if you will, as to the world of marine finance. Because I had a thought while I was listening to a couple of the charter captains there. I'm a guide. And if you tell me what target species you want, i.e. what kind of boat you want to buy and what you're going to use it for, it is my job to put you in front of the right bank for that thing that you're trying to do, right? So if you tell me you're going after mahi-mahi, well, here we're going to the Gulf Stream, or we're going up north, right? If you tell me that you're going to buy a recreational boat for this purpose, or you live in this area, or this is what your credit score is, and then I'm going to guide you towards the bank that makes the most sense for you. So it isn't unlike being a charter captain and a guide.
Why New Coast? Why align yourself with that company?
Well, honestly, I've been in the finance business for over 10 years, some of it mortgages, and then I was at another company before and then went to another company in the same industry. But I ended up at New Coast actually at the beginning of this year in 2024. The number of banks that we have access to and the number of product that we have access to, and honestly, the software system that we use and just the support staff that we have here is enormous. I can do so many things now that I couldn't do where I was before. This has been a learning curve for me, and I'm 52 years old. I've been a boater since I was 13 years old, and I understand the finance side of things, but I didn't know how the boat finance really worked. And I don't think a lot of people do. That's actually why I started yourboatmoney.com, because during COVID, when every person in the world was buying a boat, my phone was ringing so much I could not answer it. And I said, man, if there's that many people out there with questions about marine finance, there needs to be somewhere they can go to get information, to be informed, to help them make a good decision. And quite honestly, it was so that maybe I didn't have to answer the phone quite as many times, answering the same question over and over. And I immediately went to around 9,000 unique visits per month on that website during COVID. And I can't tell you how many accolades I get. It's just me. I just built a website and just took information and knowledge and put it there. I keep it updated. I keep the rates updated. And New Coast, where I am now, just gives me a lot of tools that I didn't have access to before. So I'm ridiculously happy to have made that partnership.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more business-related question. I'm going to definitely ask you a non-business-related question. So the last business-related question is, man, does Scott Bradshaw, yourboatmoney.com, or New Coast have anything new planned for 2025? Anything different?
Well, I mean, the banks are the banks, right? New Coast courts a lot of banks and makes a lot of things happen behind the scenes that I hope there's some new things coming in 25 and some exciting products. But quite honestly, the banks are the bank. Now, me personally, I plan to continue writing the blog that I write and putting more information out on the website. I plan on sharing your videos out. I'm actually going to do a little more Facebook marketing and Instagram marketing, and I'm going to take a couple of days off. I actually have an assistant that helps me quite a bit, and I'm going to take a couple of days off and take you and your crew offshore.
Deal done. That sounds like a great plan for 2025. I think you're a very smart business person if that's your plan for 2025.
It is indeed.
And that is a good setup for my non-business related question. I was going to say, hey man, enough business. Let's do a little bit of fish talk. Tell me about one of your at least semi-successful fishing trips this year, man. What did you get to do? What was fun for you?
This is the wrong year to ask. I have been offshore for a grand total of 3 trips this year, but the first trip we made offshore this year put a 64-pound wahoo on the boat. There was 3 of us on. I have a 27 Everglades that I occasionally get to run out to the stream, and my son and a friend of mine snuck off one day and on the high-speed troll put our first wahoo on the chase and raise. So that was a good time. I just need to get out there more. I just haven't had time.
Right. Well, Scott, man, thank you again for sponsoring the show, man. Thank you very much for the relationship. Thank you for what you do for the fish and boating community. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas to you, Gary. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for having me on. I'm so happy to be a part of this and share what you're doing.
And here we are with Captain Chris Osman. It's my pleasure to welcome Captain Chris Osman, Fine Catch Fishing Charters, to our end of the year holiday podcast special. We should have worked out a better name before. I feel like I'm just putting words together. End of the year holiday podcast special. Chris, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be on here, man. I've had a great time, giving out information and meeting some people that watch the podcast, and seeing that it's actually helped a lot of people out there catch more fish. So,
well, right on, man. First and foremost, we want to thank you for being a guest. I mean, we're making it official, we're making it public, so we can't take it back or deny it. And you're kind of stepped on my first question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, and I'm going to ask it with a straight face. How has doing a podcast with Fisherman's Post changed your life?
Man, it's one of those things where seeing people and having people reach out to me that said, hey, I've seen you on the podcast, and what you're telling me is working, really gives me an accomplishment that, like, I'm not just blabbing on here and saying, oh yeah, you got to fish a dock or you got to do this. People are actually taking the details and putting in there and putting it to good use, and it's making a lot of people happy. So it's been good.
Well, man, that's great. We're glad to hear feedback like that. I think that's in part why I'm asking that question, man, is I like some of the positive reinforcement I get about the podcast and the weekly reports. And I hear anecdotally from you captains too, like I don't make a point to ask. So I guess in part that's what I'm doing is, I just want to hear that people are doing the same to you that they're doing for me and thanking us for our efforts. So happy to hear that. If I change it to a fishing question, or fishing related question, man. So what's something new that you started doing on the boat this year, or what's something new that you plan on doing next year in 2025?
Try not to break stuff on the boat. I don't know. It's one of those things where I have tied some new knots on some of my slip cork rigs. You know how much I love to use those slip cork rigs. I've always been a uni-to-uni kind of knot guy, and the bigger leader I use up there with my bobber stop is kind of jammed up in the eyes when people cast sometimes. So I've changed over to an Albright knot, which is a little bit thinner knot, makes it go through the guides a little bit better. It just takes a little bit more time to tie. So I've not been as lazy, I guess, in tying some of my knots. But that Alberto knot definitely helps go through the guides better when you're casting.
I like that, man. That makes sense. I mean, I've experienced that. I mean, maybe on your boat, but on other boats too, where, yeah, that knot will hang up. On Albright, I can't even tie an Albright knot. I mean, I can if I looked it up, but I couldn't right now for $100. That's for sure.
I'll teach you next time you come on the boat.
Maybe we'll do a podcast on it.
There you go. Knot
We
tying,
should do a knots episode.
Ooh,
It's in the school. It's in the school. There is a knot tying class in the school.
In the school? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I forgot. I forgot. I host a school where we teach knots.
Are you familiar with that?
Maybe I should sit in
It's all right.
on my own school sometime instead of just walking around making bad jokes with everybody. All right. Hey, what about this, man? What's Wait, I got to look at my. Yeah, what's something you would like from Santa Claus to add to the arsenal? Either add to the boat or add to the fishing tackle.
Oh, this is like a loaded question because I'd like some really sweet hybrid boat with rigged out trolling motor, this, that. But honestly, I'd be more realistic with it.
You should be more realistic. You haven't been that good. You've been good, but you haven't been that good.
I'd probably my gold jig heads, and you see them every time I go on the boat. I'd like a 500 pack of those things. I can only imagine how many I've left on the bottom of the ICW. I mean, they're probably all over the place, but an endless supply of those would be phenomenal. Them and my gold treble hooks.
If you were to get 500 gold jig heads, would that get you through 2025?
Yeah, that would.
Okay. If you were to get 500 gold treble hooks, would that get you through 2025?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, there we go. How about this, man? Our last question for you, and we're wrapping it up, is, man, what's one of your best pieces of fishing advice or one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice to give?
Well, when people tell me fishing is fishing, they don't have any big expectations, which I love to hear all the time. But I always tell people, I said, no matter what, no matter where you are, there's always going to be a hungry fish somewhere. You just got to find them.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's true. When you go fishing with Chris, that's true.
Oh yeah,
I can speak from experience.
David, come on this podcast.
Oh, okay, right. All right, let me magically appear.
Because David has something he wants to thank you for, separate from being on the podcast.
Yeah, okay. Just that it was the fishing trip we took earlier this year was fantastic. It was probably like one of my top fishing trips ever.
That's awesome. You're talking about the one you went with Gary, right?
No.
No, the one that we caught more fish on was the other one.
You didn't have the Hurley Jinx on the
boat. That's right. That's right.
And then I didn't get him. I invited him on my trip with you. And then you know what David did? He didn't invite me on his trip with you.
Well, we were full.
Yeah, we had that discussion. We were trying to put a few extra people on the boat, too.
David was. He just doesn't get it, man. Dude doesn't get it, man.
That's
he presses buttons and that's it, man.
After 4, it just gets tough.
Well, we both again thank you for being the podcast, being a podcast guest, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, man, and thank you very much for the relationship.
Thank you guys, and Merry Christmas, and I'll see you all at the schools, and I'll see you next year, and hopefully the weather's better when we go out.
When we go spade fishing.
Yeah, we're going to go catch some spade fish. This year, 2025, it's going to happen.
That's what's going to be new in 2025. When we go spade fishing, we're actually going to catch a spade fish.
Yes.
Deal. Exactly. Done. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome, guys. Thank you.
All right. Always a joy as I welcome another longtime friend, Captain Rob Corley, Sandbar, Safari Charters, Swansboro area, man. Thanks for being a part of our end of the year holiday special podcast edition. And again, I can just keep putting words together.
Yeah, it works. That's how podcast works. One word, the next, and the next.
Well, man, we do thank you for being a guest, man, and thank you on several levels for your relationship with Fisherman's Post through the years. And, first question I ask my captain guest tonight is, how has doing the podcast changed your life, Rob Corley?
Oh, man. Well, before the Fisherman's Post podcast, I was nothing. I was just a simple charter fisherman, unknown to the world, and just barely getting enough trips to get by. And I mean, I was having to do things in the off season I don't even want to talk about. And then the Fisherman's Post podcast came along, changed my life. Changed my life, man.
I hear a version of that story almost every time I ask the question, man. I mean, I'm happy I could help you out. You needed help. I reached out. I'm glad it worked. Hey, now if we go back to fishing, man, if we actually give these people who are watching the podcast, an attempt at some content, man, what's one thing new you started doing on the boat this year, or what's one thing new you might start doing on the boat next year?
I was doing a little bit more live chumming this year in places where I was fishing with shrimp and sort of selectively. And it's always worked for me for sheep's head and black drum and and redfish to an extent when they're schooling, especially when it's colder. But as soon as we started catching trout this year, and it kind of happened a little by accident, we were catching some trout, and I wasn't seeing or expecting there to be any live shrimp in that area moving through right then. But I was throwing a couple of my smaller ones out as I was culling through them in the live well, but just like two here, two there. And it seemed to really help keep the bite going continuously. Anytime it would slow down and we'd pitch a few out, a couple more minutes later, we get a couple bites on the next shrimp floating through on corks. And then when I cleaned those trout, they didn't have like one shrimp in their belly from, getting caught. They had like five. And I mean, we catch trout that are full of shrimp in areas all the time, but these were my shrimp. Like I was throwing them out there, they're eating them, they're staying right there in the current, off the edge of the channel by our boat. And it worked really well. And I didn't have to sit there and chum 500 shrimp. It was just like, I don't know, 20 of them in the course of an hour, but it made a difference. And seeing that happen with black drum and speckled trout, I'm trying to do that more. That was fun.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I've never been on a boat when someone live chummed with shrimp. I mean, some of the more standard live chum off the beach or something, but not shrimp for trout. You got
current anywhere there's current. When the current, learning how to work with that current like the fish do makes a big difference. I've found over the years.
Next question, man. What do you hope Santa leaves you for your tackle box this year?
I mean, I want a Van Staal bailless spinning reel. It's the first time I've seen those before. I don't catalog hunt too much, and I'm probably years behind in the game. Didn't make it to ICAST this decade, but I just saw those recently, and a spinning rod or a spinning reel with no bail looks very intriguing and cool to me. So I want to see one of those pop under the tree.
Or a couple.
I'm a good boy.
What's one? You got to have a pair. You got to have a set. Then my last question for you would be, what is I guess I'll word it this way. What's either your best piece of fishing advice that you give, or what's one of your more favorite pieces of fishing advice that you like to give?
Just a lot of the simple things for managing your line to where you can feel what's happening, whether you're live bait fishing with something on the bottom, or you're jigging a lure of any kind, or working a mirror lure, a suspended plug, or when you're floating corks on slip floats or even on popping corks, learning how to keep your line tight but still moving with the current, learning how to feel your bait working but still naturally working that bait, kind of learning that connection between your line and the lure and yourself, because that's something that gets missed by a lot of people that don't fish regularly or don't have that feel. That's what feel is to fishermen, sort of, in a sense. And that's something that, with the right little bit of teaching in a short amount of time, people can really start to understand, especially with braided fishing line, because you can feel it really well, and light tackle. So it's fun seeing people and kids and older people, all ages, sort of get the feel for something like that, and then all of a sudden it clicks, and then they feel every bite. They feel when the lure is working properly. They feel when their shrimp's dragging up in the current because they're not letting out enough line when they're drifting something. And so it's something that people will pick up with me in an hour, or at least 4 hours in a half day or something. So just a couple of days really focusing on that stuff can really change your ability on the water fishing, because it just gives you that connection to what you're doing, so you're not just clueless and holding something in your hand and moving it back and forth and hoping something happens.
Right on, man. Sage advice, great advice. Thank you, Rob. And again, thank you again, man. Known you through the years, been fortunate enough to fish with you, hang out with you, schools, tournaments, podcasts. Man, I just can't thank you enough.
Hey, Merry Christmas. You guys do a great job. Don't forget, sandbarsafari.com, and we'll take you fishing this winter.
All right. Fishing this winter with sandbarsafari.com. Captain Rob Corley. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
All right. Thanks, Gary. You guys have a good one, man.
And here we are, not setting up the show with the Marine Warehouse video, but setting up the show with Emmett Stovall of Marine Warehouse himself. Emmett's been a guest before. We're stoked that you're here tonight, man. Thank you for joining us.
Man, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be included once again, especially after a past performance. I really appreciate you. Keep having me.
Well, we're suckers for punishment, man. We'll just keep bringing you back. We don't have a big learning curve, and so you'll probably even get an invite back next year, man. But first and foremost, bad jokes aside, thank you very much for sponsoring this podcast. As Billy and I used to say, man, you're the longest standing podcast sponsor. Single-handedly came on and encouraged Billy and I that we're heading in a good direction. And here I am with David and still telling Terrell jokes. And again, I hope I am being successful about getting out the message about sales, service, and parts.
Man, I really appreciate it. And speaking of Terrell jokes, Gary, this has nothing to do with anyone on this show currently, but do you know what you call a fake noodle?
Hold on a second. I want to make sure I'm following. Do I know what you call a fake noodle? And I'm looking at you, David. Do you know what you call a fake noodle?
I don't. It's one of the things that I don't know.
Do we have one of those beep out buttons in case we need to censor this?
I don't know.
Because I'm getting ready to ask him. No, Emmett. What do we call a fake noodle?
You, Gary, it is an impasta.
So good.
You are very good at channeling your inner Terrell. You might be better than me at channeling your inner Terrell.
Spirit. So, man, big shout out to you guys. I wanted to say to everyone that's listening, we have so much fun on the trail and the tournaments. We love the Spanish mackerel. I know both of us try to get our kids involved, which sometimes is a battle, but usually at the end of the day, it turns out to be an awesome day, and that goes for the tournaments too. You do such a great job. All the raffles, and the kids love it, and the adults love it, and it's just a great deal. And man, we're stoked to be here with you, and thanks for having us again, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah, man, I can tell you, this Fisherman's Post has been fun. We like putting on those inshore trail red drum tournaments, and yeah, man, Spanish Mackerel Open has been a kid tradition that I've shared with you. And now my battle is won in college. I'm a little bit ahead of you, but I'm still fighting to keep the tradition alive, man. And thanks for the kind words. And again, if I hope I'm being good to tell everyone sales, service, and parts. And what makes it easy is I get to tell people firsthand, man. I dropped my boat off with Joel, and Joel took care of me, man. And so I guess what I'll do is I'll ask you one of my stock sponsor questions here is. Man, what does Marine Warehouse have? What did you start doing new this year, or what do you have planned new for 2025?
Man, I will say one thing we'd like to get out, and a lot of our fishermen out there, we are now fully authorized Mercury parts sales service. We can do anything you want on your Mercury, so we've added that to the lineup. So that takes us to all the big stuff. We've got Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, Tohatsu, and Mercury. So if you got a problem with anything you could have on the back of your boat, we're there for you. Man, we try to turn you around quick, especially if you name drop Gary or Fisherman's Post. That believe it or not, that gets you an extra few days less. Your better turnaround is what that gets you. It gets you better turnaround. Man, we'd like to talk about just real quick, man, come check out our Carolina skiffs. We got Pear Marine and a local North Carolina boat. We have Sea Chasers, Seaborn, Sailfish, a lot of good stuff at the store. Full store full of life jackets, oil filters, parts, pieces, man, you name it. I got a fillet knife if you want it. Come get it.
Man, you do. You got Christmas gifts right there in the shop. I can say, and I think I admitted this on the podcast earlier, that where I was guilty of thinking, man, I need a new scrub brush for the boat. I guess I'm going by West Marine. And then I paused. And I said, what am I doing? My friend Emmett and Terrell right down the road have scrub brushes for my boat, and that's where I bought the scrub brush. How about that?
Yeah, we do. Cleaning supplies, man. Whatever you need. If we don't have it, we'll get it for you.
I had another question. I was going to let people know, and I think I've said it here, that I am a Sea Chaser owner. I love that boat. It meets our family needs perfectly. I'm not shopping right now, in part because I love the boat, in part because you guys keep it running so well. I have no need for a new boat, but I imagine maybe around the time of retirement, I'm going to set myself up with a new one. Although my friend Sean Doyle tells me that's a fool's game. If you have a good boat, why would you play that game? But I'm still going to play that game. But yeah, man, I like your answer. And here's another question for you. And, I'm just reading this. It's not, I think David gave me this. How has sponsoring the podcast changed your life, Emmett?
Only for the better, man. My thank you, which is sponsoring the podcast, man. Actually seeing our customers, our friends, and our family get out there on the water. That's what we're all about, man. We want to see you out there. We want to be out there. And if you got something that needs to be fixed and we can help get you back on the water, that's our true goal at Marine Warehouse.
All right, man. Well, I think this is our end of our time together. But again, one more big and, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and for, so many different arms of Fisherman's Post. And on the podcast, I stress sales, service, and parts. I think at the tournaments, one of the lines I lean into is you're not just trying to serve the fishing community, you're part of the fishing community as well and the boating community. And yeah, man. You make me laugh. You're a good dude. And, I smile more when you're around.
Back at you, Gary, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all y'all do. And we look forward to next year, man. Let's go catch some fish.
All right. Happy New Year.
Peace.
And now I get to welcome to our end of the year holiday special, Captain Dave Hagel, Pamlico Pirate Charters, one of our men on the news. Welcome to the end of year special, Dave.
Pleasure, man. Thank you for having me. And I had a ball this year, and I had a ball when you went fishing with me, and you're going to be in some of my marketing material. So thanks for the
excellent. I have an insatiable ego, and so I love appearing in as many different places as I can. It validates me.
Right when you didn't see it, but no, it's been a great year. You guys do a fantastic job, and thanks for what you do for the guide community and the rec people. We appreciate it.
Well, man, part of what we're doing here today is we're thanking you. We're thanking you for being a podcast guest, for your relationship with Fisherman's Post. So we want to do that official and publicly. And yeah, man, we got a couple of questions. And the first one is modest enough. How has doing a Fisherman's Post podcast this year changed your life?
One, I have some new friends like you guys. I had a ball with you guys, but mainly I thought about this because I kind of got tipped off on it. I think more about what I'm doing now when I'm fishing because I know I'm going to share it. A lot of times I do a lot of instinctual stuff and I'll tie stuff on and I'm actually thinking more about the process now so that I can try to articulate it to the audience. But that's one of the things it's done is maybe pay attention more. And I think it helps me in my fishing.
Right on. That's a good answer.
That was a really good one.
Joke question, and then he came up with a real answer.
Rehearsed.
All right, next question on my list, man. What's new thing you started doing on the boat this year, or what's one new thing you're going to start doing on the boat next year?
Well, as you know, I got a new Parker this year, so my new boat is my new thing. So I'm using side scan more. I'm using my power pole more. But one of the things that, and I might hijacking a question that's coming, but I'm going to add forward facing to it. That's my next stage in the progression of my tools for my clients is I'm going to add forward facing sonar.
That's a big add.
That's cool.
How do you imagine you're going to most use it, or where it will be most beneficial?
Yeah, I've done it in the freshwater side. Some of my friends that are tournament bass guys, I've been on their boats to make sure it's something that I can utilize here, and I think it's actually going to be more beneficial. I'll put it on my trolling motor. There's only a few times I'll use it. If I'm on a dock pattern, say with reds or trout, I can scan the docks. I don't have to fish 30 of them. I can fish 4 because I can see them. Bait balls are the reds in that bait ball. Same with bluefish. My trolling motor is going to be down when I do that, so I'll put it on my trolling motor.
All right. Yeah, man, I have another question, but I'm just going to change the question and say, hey, man, from Santa, what's something you would like for the tackle box?
Well, that would have been, can I change my answer? Because I can't really afford the forward facing right now. So Santa needs to come. We'll tie that into in addition to, man, I'm getting a lot of wind knots because I've been in a hurry a lot, and I've been for years wanting a professional line winder.
Ooh.
I've tried to source them on eBay. Those things are expensive. I really want a line winder because with as many rods as I carry, I have to go out and drag them all behind the boat to get them done right. You can't do them right in your house unless you have a tight winder. So that would be it. I want a line winder.
How much are those things on eBay?
$2,500. Yeah.
Wow.
And you can get the cheapo ones, and they work good, but they don't last. But what I do now is I put them on manual, the screwdriver method, and then I take my rods out in the water and I let it all come out, and then I reel them back in. That prevents my wind knots. But I really want a line winder.
Yeah, he's got good answers, man.
Those are all good.
He's prepared for this podcast.
Line winders.
All right, last question. Man, what's one of your best pieces of advice or one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice that you share?
Well, I heard your last guess, and I would agree with him. I'm not hijacking his answer. Slow down is a big one. The other one is I notice a lot of times my clients, they're thinking boat to bank. Let's assume the bank's in front of us, bank, and they forget surface to bottom. And those fish, I kind of break that into thirds. So while we all try to cast as far as we can, a lot of times you're either on top of the fish or below the fish. You fish the zones 1, 2, and 3 as well. So that's why an MR will work on certain days, and that's why something that falls faster will work on other days. Work horizontal and vertical.
All right. I like everything you're saying. And Dave, this will bring our to a conclusion. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Thank you again for being a podcast guest, and just thank you in general for the relationship, man. You're a great addition to the Fisherman's Post clan, team, community, however you want to word it.
Well, you guys are great. I'll be at the Expo in Raleigh. I'll be at the school in Morehead City with you guys. And I think I'll be in Greenville as well if you guys want to see me in the winter. I'm not fishing as much. I'm going to try to fish as much as I can. Trout or bite and go deep in the creeks. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. And now it's time for me to bring in Captain Zach Bland, UFO Charters, our Pamlico guy. And welcome to our end of the year holiday special podcast. And glad you could tune in with us, man. Glad you could make it, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Happy holidays, as everybody's been saying. I'm glad you guys could get me in, squeeze me in as a special guest. That's great. What you want to talk about?
Well, first, before we ask you some stock questions that I have sort of pre-prepared, just want to say, man, thank you for doing the podcast, man. Appreciate you making your time. Appreciate you sharing information on winter trout in Pamlico Creeks. And, again, it's a joy to talk to you, and my people appreciate, you sharing, and, just wanted to, get you on screen and not ask you questions first, but just say thank you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sounds good.
But now we go to the questions. Now that thank you's out of the way, I'm glad that's over. Now we say, hey, man, enough about me. What about you? How has the podcast changed your life?
Well,
actually, I don't think yours has been released yet.
Yeah. Well,
the recording of the special, I don't think. How do you imagine? Wait, let me rephrase that. How do you imagine the podcast is going to change your life when it's released?
I guess.
Girls, riches. What do you think, man?
Well, I'm hoping I'll be rich and I don't have to work no more. I don't know how many guys get that result out of it, but that'd be great. I don't know what kind of strings you can pull for that one. But I guess you could say mentally, it's a great outlet to talk about fishing. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time talking to you guys about fishing. I don't really expect anything out of it. If I get a couple trips out of it, that's great. If I make some lifelong friends other than you guys, that's great.
Let's just keep it at very low expectation. I think I do better if you have low expectations of what you're going to get from the podcast.
Well, I try to go in with low expectations with fishing too. All
you
around.
Manage expectations. You got to do it.
If it brings attention my way, that's great. If it doesn't, and just my friends watch it, that's okay too. They might get a laugh out of it, or somebody might get a laugh out of it. You never know. Or somebody might learn something. That's good to know that somebody takes my advice. It's good knowledge in there.
Speaking of learning curve, what is one new thing you started doing on the boat this year, or you could say, what's one new thing you plan on doing on the boat in 2025 that's new?
Well, let's see. Back in January of this year, I specifically remember I made a Facebook post and I said my New Year's resolution was going to be to spend more time chasing larger trout, targeting those giant trout. I feel like I accomplished that. I've caught a lot of nice fish this year. I really pushed myself a lot of days when you solely set yourself to fishing for larger trout sometimes, and you're doing that. You might have some bad results. You might have some long days, and then some of those days may be the best days of your life. And I kind of got a good feel of both. I got a lot of friends, we kind of share those experiences with. So that was good. That helped me become a better angler. Just sitting down, focusing, throwing bigger baits, fishing when you normally wouldn't fish, fishing different, thinking more like a fish, so to say, would be a good way to put it. Something that I would probably want to do going forward, different on my boat. I find myself getting in a rut where I like to throw the same baits a lot. I know the fish will eat them. I catch them all the time, so I'm gonna throw it. And if they won't bite it, maybe I'm just gonna say the heck with it and go home. But I think going forward, I want to try to be better at going through a certain arrangement of baits. If the fish aren't biting what I want them to force feed them, maybe they can show me something else they want to eat, and take more time to change baits and stuff like that. I don't really change baits a lot once I get dialed in through the seasons, and I feel like I could do that more. Maybe learn some more techniques, learn some more baits, some different colors, instead of just doing the same old meat and potatoes that works all the time. I think that would be something good to go for.
I think so too, man. Next question I have up here, man. What do you hope Santa leaves you for your tackle box?
I don't really have any brand preferences. A lighter action, some of the higher end reels. I don't really have names. I don't pay attention to it that much. But I know my buddies, they got some really nice like $800 to $1,000 rod and reel combos, mostly Shimano's and stuff like that. And I feel like it makes a difference fishing side by side with them. So if somebody would leave me a nice something I could fish all day and be comfortable, a light reel, light rod, handle some fish, something along those lines. I got plenty of tackle, electronics, all that stuff. Just something to help me improve the feeling of the fish.
All right, man. Well, maybe you should ask for like a set of 4, man. Instead of asking for 1, ask for a set of 4.
Yeah, 4 the same. It's like trying to bed, man. You sleep in too many, you don't know which one you want.
That's great. I've never heard that.
I haven't heard that either.
I'm glad you said it. All right, man. Last question, and then we tell you Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Last question, man. What's one of your best pieces of fishing advice, or I could word it, what's one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice to share?
The most important thing to me, there's several different ways to look at fishing, but if you want to have great success, fish with confidence. Fish with your level of confidence. Fish with baits you have confidence in. Fish in areas you have confidence in. And when you're fishing with other people or around other people, fish how you want to fish. Don't necessarily worry about what Bob and Joe are doing across the creek. Worry about what you're doing. You'll find yourself finding a lot more fish. You'll find yourself amassing an array of baits where everything in your tackle box you're confident catching a fish on. So I mean, being confident goes a long ways with fishing, especially when you're fishing around other people. Sometimes when you're by yourself, confidence can come and go. But when you put yourself side by side with other people, I mean, you can have night and day difference with confidence or not throwing the same baits and everything. So that would be my best piece of advice for people.
Man, we will take that as a good piece of fishing advice. And again, I'll end by saying, Zach, man, thank you again for the relationship. Glad you came up and introduced yourself at the Raleigh Bass and Saltwater Expo. Fisherman's Post will be back at the Raleigh Bass and Saltwater Expo. Hope you come up and say hello. You better come up and say hello if you go back to that boat show. And I've got at least a free sticker for you, man, if you go to that trouble. But man, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and sincerely, thank you very much for the relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the exposure. Happy holidays.
And now we are checking in with Captain Pierre Agena, Rising Sun Fishing Charters. And first and foremost, man, we'd like to thank you for being a guest this year. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. It was a great opportunity. And, I think I might have told you this anecdote, but, it was really nice to have somebody, just a random gentleman come up to me at the boat ramp and say, "Hey, man, I listened to all the Fisherman's Post podcasts, the weekly reports, and he just said thank you so much for doing that." And you know what? that was all we needed to make this thing worth it. So thank you, Gary.
Hey, you're welcome. We were going to let you know that you're getting a Christmas bonus, but if you've gotten all you need, then I'll just put the card in the mail.
I'll just come take something off your dock, man. We'll square up. We're good.
Well, you've kind of jumped ahead, man. The first question I'm asking you guys is, how has doing this podcast changed your life?
Well, it has made me kind of reflect, man. Honestly, it's going into the teaching stuff. You teach a lesson and then you look back on it, see how you did, and if it worked, great. If not, do something else. No, this podcast is a great opportunity for me as a fisherman to think about, what am I doing and how do I present that information to my clients? And in this case, clients being our audience with the podcast. So it's a big part of it is, can I produce that information, verbally and then put that into practice and, trial and error. There's just so many good things that come out of this thing, man.
David, can you tell how much he misses being a teacher? You can just tell.
I want to take notes when he's talking.
He regrets the decision, but it's too late, and he's just got to deal with it.
I just miss the pay, man. I just miss the money.
All right, back to my list of questions. Hey, what's new? What's one new thing, boat wise, fishing wise, you started doing on the boat this year?
Let's see. The newest thing on the boat that I've started using is I've started to use side scan a little bit more. Side scan has been something very useful that I've noticed. I had to switch transducers, but I made that jump, and that was pretty useful in finding fish on structure, on those ledges, whether I'm fishing around the jetty or, even finding ledges off the beach. You can see your fish a lot more detailed, definitely on when you're riding. You can cover a lot more ground with side scan. So that's been probably the most useful tool that I've picked up this year.
All right, and in the same spirit, man, what's one piece of fish? How about one piece of fishing equipment you hope Santa brings you for the 2025 season?
Oh man, newest piece of fishing equipment I could really go for. Honestly, just give me, a big box of every color DOA or every color mirror lure, and I think I will be just happy with that. MR17, MR18, doesn't matter. Just give me one of each.
Man, I think you're doing good, Pierre. You're doing real good. And here comes your last question.
Yes, sir.
Give us one of your favorite pieces of fishing advice that you share to people.
Well, first and foremost is don't take it so seriously. Kick back and enjoy it. If you're not enjoying the chase, then you're not out there for the right reason. But on top of that, as far as fishing, slow down your presentations. Everything you do, other than mackerel fishing, which I know what the podcast covered, that most of the times you want to reel as fast as possible. But as far as every other presentation today, I was red fishing and I had to slow down my presentation. Once I slowed it down a good bit, I started getting bites. So just if you think you're fishing too fast, you probably are.
Well, Pierre, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Thank you again for being a podcast. Thank you for the relationship on many levels, man. And happy to have this time with you.